It was a Wednesday afternoon when the call came. I was folding laundry in the bedroom, half distracted by a podcast playing in the background, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was an unfamiliar number. Normally I wouldn't have answered, but something about the moment made me curious. Picked it up. "Hello," said cautious. "Hi, is this Megan Carter?" a voice asked. "Yes," I replied, still unsure. "This is Daniel Graves. I'm your husband's boss at Franklin Enterprises. I hope I'm not disturbing you." I blinked in surprise. My husband, Jacob, had worked at Franklin Enterprises for 5 years. I'd only met Mr. Graves once at a company dinner, a brief introduction and a handshake. He had a firm grip, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of calm demeanor that suggested he never lost control. "Not at all," I said, trying to sound composed. "Is everything all right?" There was a pause. "I was hoping to speak with you privately, not over the phone. Would you be available to meet this evening? It's important." Now I was intrigued, and a little nervous. "Does this have to do with Jacob?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "But I promise it's nothing harmful. I just think it's best discussed in person." After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. We decided to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral, public, and not far from home. I didn't tell Jacob. I didn't know what to tell him. I figured I'd wait until I knew more. That evening, I arrived 10 minutes early, nerves bubbling in my chest. I spotted Mr. Graves seated near the back, dressed in a sleek gray suit, sipping from a porcelain cup. He looked up and offered a polite smile as I approached. "Megan," he said, standing up. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," I replied, taking a seat across from him. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he studied me for a moment, as though trying to gauge how much he could trust me. Finally, he leaned in slightly and said, "What I'm about to tell you, I need you to hear it completely before reacting." I nodded, confused and curious. "Jacob is one of the most talented analysts I've ever worked with," he began. "But lately, something has changed. He's been distracted, less focused. I thought it might be work-related stress. But last week, I stumbled upon something unexpected." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were several printed emails. He pushed them toward me. I hesitated, then slowly opened the folder. My eyes scanned the pages, and with each line my heart pounded harder. They were messages from Jacob. But not to anyone at work. They were addressed to a woman named Claire, someone I didn't know. The language wasn't overtly romantic, but it was intimate. He spoke of late-night conversations, private jokes, and how he felt understood by her in a way that life hadn't allowed in a long time. I looked up, stunned. "I didn't mean to read them," Mr. Graves said quickly. "I was reviewing our internal communication systems for a security breach and found these on a flagged server. First I thought it was spam. But the tone, it felt personal. I stared at the pages again. My fingers trembled. Felt sick. Jacob had never mentioned anyone named Claire. We'd been married for 8 years. We'd had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never imagined this. "I thought you should know," Mr. Graves said gently. "Whatever you do with this information, that's your choice." I nodded slowly, unable to speak. He offered to walk me to my car, but I declined. I needed space. I needed air. I walked for over an hour before finally heading home. When I walked in, Jacob was on the couch watching TV. He looked up, smiled, and asked if I wanted dinner. I stared at him, wondering how he could act so normal when everything I believed about our relationship had just shifted. I didn't bring it up that night. Instead, I sat with it, letting the weight of the truth settle in. I reread the emails in bed after Jacob had fallen asleep. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the content or the fact that he had kept this from me for who knows how long. The next day I called in sick to work. I needed clarity. I started digging. I found out that Claire was a freelance consultant Jacob had worked with months ago on a temporary project. According to LinkedIn, she lived in another city. There were no recent tags or photos of her on social media with Jacob, but that didn't mean much. I didn't confront him yet. Instead, I reached out to a therapist we'd seen once before, during a rough patch. I scheduled a session and told Jacob we were going. He looked surprised when I brought it up, but agreed. At the session, I finally let it out. "I know about Claire," I said, my voice cracking. "I read the emails." Jacob's face turned pale. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try to pretend. "Megan, it wasn't what you think," he said softly. "We never met outside of work. We talked. About everything. About how lost I felt sometimes. About work. About life. I didn't mean for it to become a secret. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," I whispered. The therapist gave us space to talk it through. Jacob admitted that the connection with Claire filled a gap he hadn't realized existed. He swore nothing physical had happened. He said he had cut off contact weeks ago. He cried, something I hadn't seen him do in years. I didn't know what to believe. But I knew I wasn't ready to walk away. We started going to therapy regularly. It wasn't easy. Trust had been broken. But Jacob was transparent. He showed me his emails, his phone. He wrote a letter to Claire telling her not to contact him again. He shared it with me before he sent it. Weeks passed, then months, and something unexpected happened. We started talking again. Really talking. Like we hadn't in years. About fears, dreams, frustrations. The emotional distance that had crept in before Claire was ever in the picture. We found pieces of ourselves we had forgotten. One evening, about 6 months after everything happened, Jacob and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. He reached for my hand. "I never deserved your forgiveness," he said. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I did it for us. And because I believed you meant it when you said you wanted to fix this." He nodded, his eyes wet. There are still days when I think about those emails. About the moment Mr. Graves showed them to me. About how close we came to losing everything. But I also think about how that moment forced us to confront what we'd been ignoring. How it became the turning point. A few weeks ago, we ran into Mr. Graves at a company picnic. He pulled me aside briefly, asked if everything had worked out. I looked over at Jacob, who was laughing with our daughter near the grill. "Yes," I said, smiling. "Better than I ever expected." And I meant it. Sometimes the truth breaks you. But sometimes it also sets you free.